since my second pregnancy, I've had a lot of chronic pain, arthritis, or just muscle pains and things like that, and that has more or less gone now.
Welcome to the Shift Within podcast. I'm your host, Alice. I'm from the Inner Shift Institute, and I'm here to guide you on a journey inside of your mind. Our podcast is a platform for catalyzing both inner and outer shifts using the power of psychedelics and powerful therapeutic tools. Welcome to your new beginning. Welcome to your new life. Today, I have the pleasure of speaking with Sam, who is an author, a business mentor for neurodivergent people, who runs a successful YouTube channel about autism, ADHD, and neurodiversity called Yo Sam Sam. And yeah, welcome, Sam. I'm very happy to have you here.
Thank you so much. Thanks for inviting me. I'm very happy to be here.
Sam was a participant at the Shift Retreat of the Inner Shift Institute last March 2024. And so I thought it would be really wonderful to talk about psychedelic therapy, about the retreat, and also generally about autism and ADHD and how psychedelic therapy can help in this case. So it's wonderful to have you here. Thank you for being here. And can you share with me or with us briefly your journey with autism and ADHD and how it has affected your life before we start?
So I was only diagnosed with autism when I was 33. So that's approximately 5 years ago, and this was after I had my son, who was my first child, and basically sort of had like I wouldn't call it a burnout, but definitely something happened after that, and I was not able to cope with life in the same way that I had been, and I kind of was thinking, what exactly is wrong with me? It was something that I knew was always there. I always knew there was something wrong. I felt like it was something wrong with me. But I never really had a word for it, and I have an educational background in psychology. I have a psychology degree, and of course we learned about autism and ADHD there, but what was taught back then in the 2000s when I was at university was very much a somewhat old-fashioned and description of autism, which didn't resonate with my own experience. So it was only... as I'm just thinking, when my son was a baby, and you spend a lot of time with babies sitting on the sofa, and I was watching a lot of YouTube, some recommendations came up about autism presenting itself differently in women. And so I clicked on them, and then it was pretty much a rabbit hole, as I call it. You go down and then you think, wow, this is a big moment, and you want to discover everything about it. And suddenly everything made sense. And then after that, I started my YouTube channel. After I got my diagnosis, I started my YouTube channel because I wanted to share my experience and kind of explain myself. It felt like I needed to explain myself, and that grew quite quickly. And eventually my audience started saying things like, do you think maybe you have ADHD? Or you definitely have ADHD. And so that was something that made me realize and take that side of myself more seriously, because even though I think autism perhaps has more stigma in the world, it's more stigmatized by society in general, I carried a lot of shame around my ADHD traits because I grew up in a way where academic achievement was prioritized, and it was very important to have these traits that allowed you to achieve success, right? Academic success. And so I felt that side of me was really holding me back. And so there was definitely that kind of inner shame. So, autistic ADHD, and now I know that that's a thing. There's a lot of people like that, and we're all similar, but also we're all different. So, I mean, it's been a very long journey for me after my diagnosis. I mean, it takes several years to process that information and revisit your own life with this new lens of like, oh, now I know why that happened, or now I know why I acted that way because I was so overwhelmed because of the sensory aspects, or etc. So it was an absolutely life-changing moment when I learned about autism, And then from then on, it's been a life-changing few years, I think, where I've been able to understand myself better than I have before.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, thank you for sharing. And I also really love how you speak about this in your YouTube channel. This is how I actually found you, as when I was on my rabbit hole search also into the topic, and I found you on YouTube because you were one of the few people who were speaking about having both at the same time, autism and ADHD. And I thought your videos were really informative, and also, yeah, I loved how you were sharing about, like from experience. And yeah, so I'm very happy that I found you and that we connected. And then I wrote to you to ask you if you would feel interested in joining our psychedelic retreat in exchange for, and I offered you a discount in exchange for speaking about it, but completely honestly and authentically from your own perspective on your YouTube channel. And the video went up last week, which we're very happy about, and I believe you had a good experience. At least that's what I see in the video. Can you tell us a little bit about your experience that you've had, and how it has, what changes it has brought into your life?
Yeah, I mean, I think, in some ways you were lucky when you approached me, because I had already had experience with psilocybin before the retreat, although it had been quite some time. It was Pαϊκyched was the last time that I did anything but microdose. And so I was already aware that this was something that was very powerful, but also that was something that I felt like it was very good for me. Every time, I mean, I live in the Netherlands, which I don't think you also realized when you approached me. So, psilocybin being legal here, I never did any drugs before because I was too afraid, or, because I thought it's illegal, and the minute I do it, I'm going to get arrested or something. I had these very, I guess, autistic black and white thoughts about this sort of thing. But then I moved to the Netherlands from the UK, and it's legal, and I thought, well, okay, it's legal. I've got to be careful, of course, but it's something I'd like to try. And it's very different when you just do it at home to see what it's like. But I definitely noticed already from those mental health benefits. And this was the first half of my journey before I was diagnosed, or before I realized that anything was up with regards to autism or ADHD. And I think that the first year after I sort of tried it for the first time, I think I took 3 doses in total. And it pretty much, I don't want to say cured, but I was someone who had chronic depression throughout my teens and my 20s. And although I will not say I think I am susceptible to depression, it kind of comes and goes, but that kind of chronic ongoing depression is no longer a part of my life. And so that was kind of like the first phase, right? So when you approached me, I was really excited because I had obviously this positive experience beforehand, but also I am a psychology nerd. I'm a psychology nerd. I'm a neurodivergence nerd, and I'm turning into a psychedelics nerd. So this was just like the perfect combination of all that. And I had been very interested in psychedelic therapy for a while. Obviously, I'd read, no, I didn't. I watched the documentary, Michael Pollan's documentary, How to Change Your Mind, and another documentary about mushrooms, fantastic fungi. And so, I think I was just waiting for the right time. I knew it was something that I wanted to do. And then then your email came into my inbox like fate or something. So I think what I'm trying to say is I went into it with good expectations, and maybe a lot of hope. Like I said, I'd had this experience before where the psilocybin had long-term changes on my experience of depression. And so I think my intention was a little bit different going in, because I think that's I think the intention is very important, and I think also the mental state that you're at is important. So to give some background, after my second child, I'd had experienced quite some trauma. She was what the Dutch call a crybaby, a howl baby, which was as a result of silent reflux. So we had several months where she would not stop crying for days and days, and especially as an autistic person with noise sensitivity, but also just, the chaos. You're looking forward for 9 months while you're pregnant to spending time having newborn baby cuddles, and then it's completely flipped. So there was a considerable amount of trauma, and I think as a result of that, I was never diagnosed, but I certainly had quite significant mental health problems, postpartum depression, depression, anxiety, OCD, all of this. And as a result of that, I had been microdosing on and off, and I had also been in therapy, and it was the first time I'd been in therapy specifically with someone who understood autistic people. So the very long story is that this is really just explaining where I was at the start of the retreat. I'd gone through a lot. I'd looked at a lot of stuff within me already, and I kind of came in ready to face whatever came up, And obviously, everybody kind of comes in with at a different point in their journey. But I also think that I don't want to say results, but the experience that I had was because of all of that stuff that came before, So let's go back. What was your actual question? That was a very roundabout, but I feel like it needed a full explanation. Like where you are at the start of this is very important. Yes. So what was the experience I had on the retreat was what you asked me.
Yes, and how did your life change after? So that's probably why you brought up this.
Yeah, because you need to know where we start, right? Yeah. So I was very nervous going in, even though I was very excited and hopeful in a lot of ways. I am quite outgoing for an autistic person, I think. But I also, and I think this is something I said in the video, like this idea of being very vulnerable with a group of strangers is extremely terrifying. And I'd never done any kind of a group therapy or, anything like that. So I was very, I don't know what the word would be, maybe a little bit closed off. I was a little bit trying to hold myself together and keep everyone at a little bit of a distance when I started, because the idea of connection and closeness was not something that was really accessible to me at that time. And so we had the two ceremony days, and both of them were for me very positive experiences. Like when I say that, I mean I look back on them with fondness, and I would say that there were very difficult moments in both of them. But overall, the experiences that I had were transformational, in the sense that the first time I went in with the intention of coming back to myself, and I think that's important to know that the intention, because the intention is so important. It sets the scene, and it's something that when you're going within, you're like, oh yeah, wait, what am I trying to do again? And you keep kind of coming back to the intention, which for me was to come back to myself. And so I felt that this was not a loss of identity, but I felt I'd been through so many identity changes, becoming a parent, and then also, receiving diagnoses and all of these things. And then I felt like I got to a point where I didn't even understand really who I was. And so that was the first one, and the first trip I found was was more gentle than the second trip. It was very nurturing, and I felt safe and supported, not just by the mushrooms, quite significantly by the mushrooms, but also obviously by the people around me. But I also felt like it was very internal. I didn't feel like I needed that much support. Whereas my second trip, it was like I'd had my cup filled up again from that first one, and then I was ready to go into the second one. And the second one was where my body I believe that my body processed and expelled trauma through the narrative of giving birth. That was kind of the story that was what I was going through. And during that time, I realized that this wasn't going to be something that was even achievable without someone else there. And one of the facilitators, Jeanne, I think, came up to me, and I just instinctively, I was like, well, she's my doula, right? So I immediately had that connection with her, and she very much kind of understood. Maybe she didn't, but it seemed like she understood at the time what was happening. And so the second trip, I don't know if this is very usual. I didn't really go into a mental place at all. The mushrooms went straight to my body. I gave birth to the trauma, which was... it was physically completely exhausting, as you can, as childbirth is. It was the same vibes. It was breathing and contracting, you know. And then I went to the toilet, and then I came back and birthed some more with one of the other facilitators who had no idea what was going on. And I couldn't really talk. All I could say to her, I whispered to her, I'm giving birth. And she's like, oh, okay. But then after I'd processed that trauma really, you know, in a very physical, visceral kind of way, I needed rest. And then the intention for my second journey was connection, connection with others, and processing the trauma while having someone right there holding your hand, telling you, I'm not going anywhere, I'm right here. You know, that's incredibly powerful. And then by the time, you know, I'd had a rest after that, I just felt really good. And I felt connected to everyone else in the group. A lot of other people started, you know, coming around, and we did some dancing, and it was a really beautiful day. It was a really, really beautiful ceremony. And, you know, I felt about 1,000,000 times lighter after it. And so these are incredibly powerful transformational journeys, both of them, you know, even one by itself, but the combination of both of them was just, I mean, it's like a rebirth in a lot of ways. You know, obviously, when you say, well, what is the shift that you've noticed after that? Like, a rebirth is a rebirth. That's a big shift in itself. I've noticed a lot of positive effects on my body. Since my second pregnancy, I've had a lot of chronic pain, arthritis, or just muscle pains and things like that, and that has more or less gone now. I've cut down my caffeine drastically. It was very, very tough giving up caffeine before the retreat, and it was so tough that I was like, wow, how much caffeine am I drinking? And then I added it all up, and I thought, well, that's really a lot, you know. And by the time, you know, I'd had 4 days off before the start, and then we had another 6 days. You know, by the time I got to the end of it, I thought, I don't even feel like drinking that much coffee anymore. So now I have 1 coffee a day and maybe some green tea, but, you know, I stick to that, and I don't need any more. And I do feel like I have a lot more energy, physical energy and mental clarity. So that's been a very positive side effect. My physical stamina is better. You know, I was telling you that my heart feels less like I've got, you know, a cage around it. It's always felt very tight and tense when I try and do cardio. So I've never been very good at cardio exercise, and that's something that has also shifted. So I've had quite a lot of mental benefits and quite a few physical benefits as well. I think one of the things I said to you at the end of the retreat was like, I really want to go shopping, right? Yes. And I was feeling a bit like I felt almost a bit like guilty, or that like that was wrong somehow. Like, you know, I go through this amazing spiritual rebirth and I want to go shopping. But it made sense. It actually does make sense, because if you don't know who you are, you don't buy clothes that are you. You end up surrounded by feeling like not in your own identity. So this was one of the things, this dress was one of the things that I bought, Mushroom Queen dress, as a way to like sort of mark and remind myself of that new identity, or not new identity, but current identity. Like, this is who I am now. And I ended up buying this bracelet here because I felt very much like I'm gonna go away, and this is all gonna have been just like a wild dream. And so I really wanted to have physical reminders of this experience. So, you know, I didn't go on a massive shopping spree. I bought a few things, but that was important because I'm not really a shopper, you know. And when you have kids, it's very easy you always prioritize buying them things. And so that was kind of like something that I went away and I was like, no, I have to prioritize myself, because that's who I am, you know. And I felt very grounded. That's one of the words that I felt throughout both of the journeys and afterwards, is the groundedness that I felt and connection with my place in the universe. Like, I'm meant to be here now, right? Rather than just floating around feeling like I don't fit in, I feel like I'm actually meant to be here, which when you think about it, how long I've had maybe this feeling that I wasn't supposed to be here, that's quite sad that I didn't feel like I belonged in the universe, the whole universe that I was born into. So that's been quite amazing. I think I've run out of positive things to say. I think that's probably enough, isn't it?
Well, there are quite a lot of shifts that you have experienced, and I think the last one you mentioned is probably the most important one, because you can make all the changes in the world. If you feel like you don't belong in this world, then anything you do just doesn't make any sense. So I think it's incredible that you came out of the retreat having this feeling that you belong. There's also something that I wanted to create when I created this retreat. When I was in 2014, I went to a permaculture retreat, so it has nothing to do with psychedelics. Mm-hmm. But this was the first time in my life that I was there for 2 weeks, and I came out of this retreat and I felt like I belonged. That's the feeling I got when I was there, and I came out of it, and I went back into my life, and it was a feeling that came and went. It was not something that always lasted, but I had made this experience of this is what it feels like to belong, and that's what I want to create in my life. I want to live every day feeling like I belong, no matter if I'm in this permaculture retreat or not. And then I managed to create a life where I do feel like I belong, and I use psychedelics. That's, you know, at the permaculture retreat, I didn't know anything about psychedelics, so I use psychedelic therapy for myself to create this feeling in me. And then when I designed this retreat, the Shift Retreat, I wanted to create that for the people that come. I wanted to create that same experience where they come and they feel like they belong, where they come and feel like they can fully be themselves, that there's absolutely no shame around nothing, and that they can open up, they can share anything they want to share, even the most craziest beliefs, and not be shamed for them, like share any emotions they have and feel really fully welcomed, so that they can take that feeling of belonging also back into their lives. And then, of course, combined with the psychedelics, which are already really powerful in giving you that feeling. I'm very happy that you've made this experience, because that was exactly my intention when I created it.
That's awesome. It's great to hear. But I think that it just goes to show, you know, for people who don't know psychedelics or haven't done them before, it's like, it's not this magic pill. You know, it's not like, oh, well, this is a medicine that's so amazing and it's just going to cure you. It's completely dependent on the surroundings and the context. And that's, I think, a lot of the reason why people have bad trips. because they have expectations that the drug will do something to them, but actually it's the whole environment as well in combination.
Yes, exactly. I myself had some traumatic experiences when I went to other retreats in my 20s before I started doing my own retreats. I started out as a participant myself in the world of psychedelics, and I was in an environment that was physically safe but emotionally not safe. So I had a need. I voiced that need, which was already something that was very unusual for me, because I usually didn't voice my needs, and then the need was shut down, and I came out of the experience and I felt more traumatized than before, and that was one of the motivations that I had of saying, like, I would love to create an environment for people where they're not only physically safe but also emotionally safe, because that is so important in order to create that actual deep inner shift. Because there's so much that can go wrong. Like Dr. Stan Grof, one of the pioneers in psychedelic therapy, he said psychedelics are like a knife. With a knife you can kill someone, but you can also save their life, and it all depends on the intention of the person taking it, and also of the environment, and the intention of the people that are guiding you through the experience, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And I can really see how there may be other situations, other retreats like this that could go badly, because it's a very vulnerable thing, right? You surrender yourself to the little cup in front of you and you think, okay, I don't know what's going to happen, don't know where I'll go in my mind, and I don't really know these people, so you put a lot of trust in them. And for me, the people really made the experience, because it was clear that you had put thought into making sure that the right people are there. I don't generally feel emotionally safe in the world, but there I really did. And I think that possibly, one of the first times in my life that I've had, not just with the psychedelics, but an experience where, you spend time in that enclosed environment where you are safe. And that's also quite powerful too.
And do you feel like, as somebody who is neurodivergent, do you feel like the retreat feel safe for you in that way as well, that you could just show yourself as you were and feel welcomed?
Yeah, I think so. There are several other neurodivergent people, openly neurodivergent people there, and I think that there's definitely something about psychedelics also that probably appeals to neurodivergent people. I'm not sure I know how to answer that question, but I did feel safe as a neurodivergent person. I don't need to do certain things. So, for example, I don't need to stim a lot to regulate. So that means that I'm not just looking for somewhere where I can go and flap my hands in peace or something like that. There are neurodivergent people who maybe would want to come to a place where that would be free. But to be honest, I felt like if I'd wanted to, that would have been totally fine and people would have really understood. So I do think that it is as safe space as you can make for neurodivergent people. And I think also that it was really good to have the itinerary, to know exactly, what was going on. Because for me, I do tend to get quite nervous when I'm not sure, when are we doing this? What time are we starting this? And having that really clear and even though, when all the meal times are, when everything is. So there's this predictability in an extremely new environment, but that predictability was kind of built in. So I think that was part of also what helped me feel safe, was knowing what's going to happen, I don't know. I think just the accepting environment makes such a big difference. And it's not necessarily that you have to do this or do that or set things up a certain way, but having so many, staff members there who were just willing to listen and accept, and not, such a non-judgmental kind of environment, I think is probably something very special.
I'm very happy to hear that. Yeah, that's our main focus. What we try to do is to make people feel safe to be who they are, no matter if they're neurotypical or neurodivergent. But I do believe that we attract a lot of neurodivergent people. And
I think so, yeah.
I mean, I know that we do when they're diagnosed, but I also see that a lot of undiagnosed people find their way to this, to us. And maybe that's also, I think this is partly because psychedelic therapy appeals to neurodivergent people, and also because I am neurodivergent myself. Team members that we have are neurodivergent, so maybe that's also part of.
It's the energy attracts each other, right?
Exactly, yeah. That's why I love the retreats, because it's just always full of neurodivergent people, and I just really love to be surrounded by them. I feel like I can be just my crazy self.
Yeah.
Be fully okay with it. What would you say, like you have studied psychology, you know a lot about neurodivergence and neurodivergency, and you have also made that personal experience. What would you say, how can psychedelic therapy help or benefits individuals with autism and ADHD?
Well, I know anecdotally, I've certainly heard a lot of people saying that they've helped various parts of themselves, various traits that they were not very happy with, because I don't think every neurodivergent trait is something to be cured. There are plenty of neurodivergent traits that are, healthy, but then it comes down to what are the parts of yourself that don't feel good and what that you're not happy with, not because other people aren't, but because that's not how you want to be. I noticed that it did help my executive functioning, and this is something that, we're about 5 weeks on from the experience. I'm starting to notice, not going back to it, but it's wearing off a little bit. I definitely had a good month where the executive functioning was much improved, and I came back, and I've always taken ADHD meds kind of as and when I need them. I'm on something that I can choose to do that with, and I just didn't take them for a while because I felt like I didn't need them. And I'm very wary of saying it cured my ADHD, because I can definitely feel that, I feel like my brain is kind of coming back to a place where, every now and then I really do need that to keep my motivation levels up and actually get things done. But my overall level of functioning, and when I say functioning, I mean like in daily life, being able to get through the work I need to do, make sure that my kids are all dealt with, make sure that the house is taken care of, and potentially even have some time for myself. I feel like, that baseline has come up a little bit, so general quality of life in terms of how well I can manage these things. For the autistic traits, I definitely notice a difference in my sensory experience, and this is something that for me fluctuates a lot anyway. And when actually for quite a while afterwards, I did notice far fewer sensory overwhelm and just generally being distressed by sensory stimuli. And, I still have 2 young, probably neurodivergent kids, and they do make a lot of noise a lot of the time. And, there's sensory stuff in life that you can't just shut yourself away from all the time. And I noticed that really was dramatically improved, especially the week after the retreat. I'm trying to think about whether this may have worn off a little bit. I think it's worn off a little bit, but not completely. And that's something that I don't know enough about the brain and about sensory processing disorder and things like that to know exactly how that might work, but that's my experience. I think the sensory stuff, especially noise, but other aspects of sensory stuff is one of the things that contributes to, for me, for meltdowns. For other people, it might be unexpected changes and things like that. So I can only really speak to my own experience. So for both my autism and ADHD, I do notice significant improvements in myself. And so obviously this has a great impact on quality of life. I just wish that I had any time or space to do like a PhD about this, because I would love to know exactly how this all works. And I think from talking to other autistic or ADHD people, they've seen similar benefits in terms of internal regulation, sensory overwhelm being reduced, and also sort of potentially ADHD symptoms being reduced. So I'm sure there's more out there. I'm sure there's more that other people experience, but those were the main ones for me. And I think we had this conversation afterwards, sort of saying like, I definitely came out of the retreat and I was like, I don't even feel autistic anymore. Or like, I don't feel like autistic and ADHD. I just feel kind of, well, tired. Like I was very tired by the end of it. It's emotionally and physically demanding. But I had this feeling of like, if these things, what did I say? If these things are gone, like, am I even properly autistic anymore? You know, and it was kind of like more of a philosophical question. I don't know what your thoughts are on that one.
Yeah, so for me, my thoughts on autism, on ADHD is like in the medical scientific world, we call them disorders. I have a problem with the word disorder. I personally have made the experience that, at least for me, it doesn't feel like a disorder. So I have been diagnosed with ADHD. I believe I have autism too, and I like watched your videos and I was like, I can identify myself in a lot of these traits as well, but I'm not officially diagnosed. I have noticed that, like for me, for example, with the psychedelic therapy, it has helped me in my personal life, and with my ADHD and autism symptoms, is I had so much shame around being myself because I had always felt different. I've always felt like I did not belong. I've always felt like, oh my God, I'm not trying hard enough. I'm not doing well enough. I'm not living up to my potential. I'm lazy. All of these beliefs were so programmed into my subconscious mind, and they were making my life so hard. Not necessarily ADHD and the autism, but all of the beliefs I have carried and I have put into my subconscious mind because of the way I grew up with this undiagnosed neurodivergency. And so the psychedelic therapy has helped me to let go of these beliefs, to transform these beliefs, to start loving myself. At some point then, when I got the diagnosis, that definitely helped because it gave me an actual explanation of your brain actually does work different than the brain of other people. So that started to make even more sense. And now I'm in a place where I see autism and ADHD as a different way of the brain working. But if we change the environment that we live in, and that is also the internal environment, because the internal environment can be extremely abusive. So if we change that environment, and then if we also adapt the environment that we live in, I believe that we can have an actual, that we can have a great life that doesn't feel like we're disordered. I mean, I think to some degree, we're always going to feel disordered in the complex world that we live in. But I think that's more the world that we live in, and that our brain doesn't fit that world. It's very complex. There are lots of distractions, and maybe we also feel disordered in that world, not because we're disordered, but because we're meant to create changes. We're meant to make this world go slower. We're meant to make it simpler. And so I believe that, and this is just my belief, but I don't think I have a disorder because my brain works differently. I believe that nature intended it to be this way, because if I look around me and I see the people I like most, they're all neurodivergent, and I think they are brilliant minds and amazing innovators, and they're creative. They're just so much fun. And I think that is part of the neurodivergence too. And so if you would take the neurodivergency away, then you would take that away too, and that would just make me so sad. It would make me sad for myself to have this be taken away, and it would also make me so sad because all of my best friends are like that too, and I would not want to miss that.
Yeah, and I think it's also something to be said about trauma and how that affects neurodivergent brains, because a lot of what we think of as traits are also expressions of trauma.
Yeah.
They're not necessarily that this is what autism is, but this is what happens to an autistic person when they are traumatized. And so, coming back to that, then, with psychedelic therapy, I've definitely had the experience of, wow, this is a really good way of processing trauma that you cannot process by talking about it. And I mean, we know that autistic brains don't process stress in the same way. And so, we're almost like biologically primed to be more stressed about things in general. And so I think there's a danger of thinking like, oh, well, actually, these things are a part of me. This shame is a part of me because I am autistic, and this is sort of something that cannot change. And I think we both have experiences to the contrary that say it is possible to thrive. It is possible to change and to not live, like you said, in an abusive internal environment.
Absolutely. I think that, like, for me, this was the key to living a life that feels really stable and happy, was to change that internal environment. And I believe that ADHD, autism in itself, does not need to be a problem or a disorder, but ADHD and autism coupled with trauma, coupled with internal abuse that we have picked up from, this is not that somebody would like consciously choose to internally abuse them, but they have learned how to do that in their childhood and still doing it until now. So this coupled together, this is what makes it really difficult to live, and this is what creates extreme stress in us. And then, yes, we are not so well equipped to handle stress, so then that's going to make it harder. But yeah, if we can change that inner voice that we have, that inner critic, if we can start loving ourselves the way we are, then it is so much easier to go through life as a neurodivergent person.
And I think then it's really important to, because I didn't really like it when I said I didn't feel autistic, because I was like, well, but I am. And I know that I am, and I know that I'm different, and the good bits are different, So it didn't feel good to suddenly think, oh, well, maybe I'm not. And so I think that's really like what I want to try and get out on, on my platforms. The message is like, you need the right environment to thrive, both external and internal, and you deserve that. It doesn't have to be like this.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. And we can be the way we are, and we are autistic, we have ADHD, and this is actually the first label in my life that I wear proudly. I've always been the person who's like, who needs labels? I don't need a label. And then when I got the ADHD label, I'm like, oh my God, this is really great. I can now have an explanation for, when I compare, I've compared myself to others all my life, and it just was like, just did not make any sense. And now it does make sense. So I love to wear this label proudly, and it has made my life better. And it has helped me to change that in internal voice that I have even more. But I would just love to see a world where everyone, including neurodivergent people, can just can just be themselves without shame and bring their gifts into our community. Like when I say community, I mean like small community, big community of the world. I would just love to see a world where we can each, like all of us, see our gifts, bring them into the world, and also see our weaknesses and smile about them. It's just like, yeah, I'm really not good at this. Like I'm still, like today, I am really bad at organizing the household. But I'm very good at doing business, so I can hire someone to help me doing the household. So it doesn't need to be a problem. It's just, I have strengths, I have weaknesses because of the way that my brain works, and everybody does. Don't even have to make such a big separation in there. Like each of us have strengths, each of us have weaknesses. Now, can we stop shaming our weaknesses and forgetting about our strengths and just do it the opposite way? That would be great.
That was part of my upbringing. It wasn't necessarily something that my parents said, but certainly the schools that I went to were very traditional in a lot of ways, and that was really it's really academic schools are all about just trying to eliminate any weakness, right? And say, this is not tolerated here. And then everything must be a strength. I definitely felt so much pressure that I had to be good at everything I did, which then as an adult, when you realize that that's pretty messed up, you have to unlearn it all, which is also a challenge.
Yes.
And that's something, I started learning the piano last year, and that's definitely brought me back to being at school, doing music and this sort of perfectionist thing. And the biggest challenge for me has been to unlearn. It's not been actually learning the piano. It's been to unlearn the expectation that I have to be perfect. That's even something I should be striving for, and that can be very hard. And you need to surround yourself by the right people, the right teachers.
Absolutely, yeah. There's so many things that we need to unlearn from the society that we grew up in, that if we picked on, that is really unhealthy, and it's creating stress and just a feeling of not being good enough or not being worthy. And that's why psychedelic therapy is also really amazing, because it gives you that neuroplasticity, so you can unlearn the things you have learned easier.
Yeah, exactly. And it's like when you can process things without feeling shame or fear, you can just see them far more clearly.
Absolutely.
All of a sudden. And that was one of the things I remember on the second trip, was that I was kind of just lying there chilling and enjoying myself, and I was sort of having these little realizations after realization about the way that things are, and it was a very mind-opening experience, I suppose. Realizing that actually you've been stuck in this perspective, and it's not necessarily the truth.
Exactly, yes. So I have one last question. If you look back at your journey at the shift, like coming to the shift retreat, what advice would you give your past self before attending the shift retreat for the first time?
Bring comfier clothing. Like just bring more pajamas. That was definitely the thing. I didn't really know what to wear, and the clothes I brought I was very uncomfortable in them. I did I brought a nice pair of pajamas, which I wore for the 2 trips. But I would say, bring loungewear. You can be comfortable there, so pack for a cozy time.
That's some great advice. That's great. Thank you. Is there anything else that you would like to add from our conversation?
I think, I'm well aware that it's something that may not be for everyone, but I have been so profoundly affected by my own experience, not just with the psilocybin, but from the entire retreat. And so I think that I would encourage people to have an open mind when they think about whether it's something that would be suitable for them, because there may be people who think, I've never done drugs in my life. This sounds like a very overwhelming thing, but it's not about the drugs, I think that's really the take home that I want to say is absolutely they do help a lot in a lot of ways, but it's about the experience, and it's about the retreat that you've created, designed in such a way to be most effective with the psilocybin. And that's very, very important as well. Thank you.
Well, it was really lovely to speak to you today, and it was also so lovely to have you at our retreat. Your presence was just a wonderful part of the week of the group, and I'm so happy that I invited you.
Thank you so much for inviting me. I'm just still incredibly grateful that you reached out to me right when I needed it.
Thank you. Well, thank you also for sharing all of your knowledge about neurodivergency and your own experience. And for the listeners, I hope that you enjoyed today's episode. And if you want to stay connected to us, then please make sure to follow us on social media. We're on Instagram, Facebook, and TikTok. Just find the Inner Shift Institute. And don't forget to subscribe to our podcast for more conversations and helpful insights. Thank you, Sam, for being our guest today. Thank you for the conversation. And I hope this is not going to be the last time that we speak.
Yeah, me too.
Thank you. Thank you for listening to the Shift Within podcast. If you enjoyed today's episode, be sure to subscribe for more insightful conversations. Keep asking, keep understanding, keep shifting within, and see you next time in the next episode.